No, Patriots are tonight. Okay. Shavua Tov, everybody. So the last few weeks, I mean, it's going to be like maybe close to 2 months. We've been doing the last 6 Psalms. And I was, and they're just so happy and upbeat. It's not very Jewish of them. So, so now we can relax. We're doing Psalm 6. We know Psalm 6 as Tachanun. For Ashkenazim, this is Tachanun. And so it's really gets us back into into a depressing mood, which, we Jews are good at depression. So anyway, okay. But I have to admit that my favorite Psalms are not the hip hip hooray Psalms. They're beautiful. It's good we have them. Hallel, and of course the Hallelujah is at the end of Sefer Tehillim. But the Psalms, a little bit like this one. We'll see another one next week that's of the same style. The Psalms with David HaMelech is working through problems. I really find those Psalms not only the meatiest of the Psalms, but also the most inspiring ultimately. Because you want Psalms, you need Psalms for when, you've just had a victory in the 6-Day War and things like that. You need Psalms to really say, hip, hip, hooray for Kadosh Baruch Hu. However, many times, perhaps most of our lives, we want Psalms that help us get through the nitty-gritty, the difficulties of life. And this, and this is one of the most famous of them, perhaps one of the more depressing of them, but okay. But it's an important Psalm. We say it all the time, so we should know what it is that we're saying. There's a famous statement that there are 2 things that make Jews happy. The 2 things that make Jews happy are free food, whether it's a kiddush or whatever it is, free food, and the other thing is no tachanun. So whenever you come into shul and they say, oh, no tachanun, those are the 2 things, The only thing, I'm sorry?
Why no tachanun?
It's because something happy happened. I used to go to a minyan, the Young Israel of Greater Miami. I was a shliach in South Florida, and I went to North Miami Beach, and in the back of the shul, there's the 8 o'clock minyan every day at that shul. It's a very nice shul. In the back of the shul was a moyel, and he actually did milah for one of my sons, and his name was Rabbi Saif. Saif in Hebrew is a sword. So it's like a great name. And he was the 3rd generation of Moalim, and he gave out cards that said Saif the Knife was his card. But he sat in the back of the shul, and every day after Chazarat Hashatz, the Chazan would turn around and look for Rabbi Saif. And he would either go, which meant, so the camera can see it. So maybe he would go thumbs up, which meant no tachanun, because he was performing a brit that day. Because if the moyel is there, or the sandik is there, or the father is there, then there's no tachanun, happy occasions. If there's a chatan there, but of course there were days when, he would go, thumbs down, and everybody would sit down to say tachanun and groan, tachanun. But it's really a beautiful psalm. And yeah, please, Jay.
There was a moil in Chicago who wore a different tie.
Interesting idea. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember. Now I'm going to repeat it for the camera. Okay, I don't know if anyone's listening, except I think my wife is on. Okay. Hi, Rivka. So anyways, I'll repeat it. So Jay just said that the moil he had in Chicago years ago had a different tie. So you knew if there was a brit or no brit, whether based on the tie he was wearing. Okay, great idea. But we're going to look at tachanun a little bit differently, and we're going to try to see what's going on. One of the things that bothers me tremendously, and I'm much happier when I go to a Nusach Sfard or Sfardi shul, or even Chabad, because they say a different psalm, and that's the psalm we're going to do next week, 25. And we'll compare why they do 25 and we do 6. We'll take a look at the difference between the two. But I'm happy because our psalm has 11 verses. We only recite 10. We skip the first. We'll see why in a minute. But in so many shows, you don't have time to say it. It's a beautiful psalm. We're going to see it's just filled with meaning. And this morning I went to a 6 o'clock minyan and I had barely sat down. And the chazan was going on to, Shomei Israel. I mean, it's such a meaty psalm. How can you just zip through it? But okay, people do. So let's begin. But I want to begin. I'm gonna at the end. I'll say a couple of halachas as well. But I want to mention one halacha about Tachanan when we begin. We call this Tachanan, but there's another name for it. It's also called Nefilat Apayim, which literally means falling on your face. And if you remember back in Chumash, there are a number of cases when something would happen, like Korach would start his rebellion, or the Jews sinned with the sin of the spies. Okay, and the response of Moshe Rabbeinu was to fall on his face on the ground, to fall groundward, and that was a traditional method of teshuvah, to fall on your face. Now, we don't do that anymore. We stopped falling on our faces sometime during the time of Chazal. And the reason we stopped was because people had stone floors. And falling on stone floors, it looks like you are davening to stone, to wood and to stone. And so they were worried about certain aspects of idolatry. And so we stopped falling on the floor. The only time we fall on the floor in our davening today is on Yom Kippur. Some people in Rosh Hashanah, it depends on your custom, but basically on Yom Kippur, when we recreate that moment in the Beit HaMikdash, when the Kohen Gadol said Shem Hashem, when he came outside, the real name of God, not the way we say it, the real pronunciation of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and everybody fell on their faces, and that's when they claimed that they had the great miracle, that they were tzafuf, they were crowded together, but yet when they started to bow, there was room. But nowadays, when we do it in a Batei Knesset, if you have a stone floor, some people also with a wood floor, we put down a shmata or something. I want you to know, a friend of mine came up with a cushioned piece of plastic that you put on the floor that helps really do it, and he calls it his atonement. So to him, Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. And hopefully he sold a bunch of them. But anyways, so that's to stop that, because we don't do it. So what do we do instead? We ke'ilu, as if fall down on our faces by covering our face, putting it down on our arm. There are many different customs. Do you put it on your left arm, the right arm, or do you put it on the arm that doesn't have tefillin? So I don't want to go through the different customs because not everyone agrees. Some people will put their head on the arm with tefillin. Women perhaps should always use their left arm if they're saying tachanan. There are other customs in certain communities where women don't put their head down, and I'm not sure exactly why women don't say tachanan. But whatever it is, nefilat apayim, falling on your face. So when we recite this psalm, we do it in 3 modes, because there are 3 different modules in which you can daven. One is you fall down. That's the beginning. That's the psalm we're going to say right now. We're going to do our best to learn. And then Shomer Yisrael, we sit up. And then V'anachnu lo yeda ma lasot, we stand up. So we have fallen, seated, standing. And so we're like beseeching Hashem in every mode in which you can approach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so that's become the custom as well. And that's why the real name for the custom is called Nefilat Apayim rather than Tachanan. But we'll talk about the word Tachanan in just a second. The psalm itself, please.
Are they of equal value?
What's the they?
So when you speak about falling down, sitting up and standing up, is there a difference, a level of
Oh, good question. The Gemara seems to say that falling on your face in terms of tshuva is the most powerful. In terms of petition, standing. Like, you stand hat in hand before somebody you're begging something from. For petition, they say standing is the best. But for tshuva, the falling down, which is fascinating, because when these other bad guys did things in the Chumash, the response of Moshe Rabbeinu was to fall on his face. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu was doing tshuva for them, but he wasn't doing tshuva for them. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest leader of all time. A great leader takes responsibility that we're having this problem. People are rebelling, whether it's the spies or it's Korach. People are rebelling against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. I take responsibility. I didn't lead the people well enough. And that's why this is happening. And that's an amazing response of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's one other thing about falling down that I just want to mention. Where do you fall down? The normative minhag of most people is you only do nefilat apayim, put your head down rather than just sit down, when there is an Aron Kodesh or a Sefer Torah. There's a machlok, does the Sefer Torah have to be kosher? If there's a apostle Sefer Torah, do you do it? Most people say yes, fine. And that's based upon a story in Sefer Yoshua, when Yoshua also fell down, and it says he fell down before Aron Habrit, before the Ark of the Covenant. And therefore, we say that's where you do it. However, Reb Moshe Feinstein wrote that if you're teaching kids to say Tachnan and you're having services in school and you don't have a Sefer Torah there, you should still fall down for educational purposes. The kids learn how to do it. And he said, you know what? All of the Sfarim in the school may do the trick. So they may be good enough. Rabbi Soloveitchik fell down all the time. He said that's the way you're supposed to say the prayer, whether it's Sefer Torah or not. And he used Moshe Rabbeinu as his model, not Yoshua, like the custom developed. And there's one other thing, Yerushalayim. Some people say, wherever you are in Yerushalayim, you are always before the ark because you Harabayit, and therefore people will fall for Tachnan without a Sefer Torah any place in Yerushalayim. And that was historically my personal custom, that if there was no Sefer Torah, I wouldn't fall unless I was in Yerushalayim. But there's one last position that Rev Tukachinsky, not important who, but said it was only in the old city. He didn't include the new city. I don't like that psak because we live in the new city. We want the whole city to have kedushat there, Yerushalayim. So, but whatever. So there were different customs about that. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry to make you wait.
I read something about Yom Kippur that women are not supposed to.
It's the same argument. Should women fall? And some people say it's because there's the Hershey. I'm going to get into trouble with this. There's the Hersheyan approach that women don't have to because they already are more spiritual than men. That position. Some say women shouldn't fall down onto the floor or put their heads down because there's a tzniut issue. So in the Beit HaMikdash, they perhaps didn't. We're not really sure. And today, the custom is getting stronger that women do. However, hakol lefi haminhag, and everybody goes according to their own custom, and it depends on your community as well. You do what your family, your community do. I'm sorry?
In America, I don't remember any women doing it.
I've seen both.
Maybe in Boston.
Yeah, I've seen both. Yeah, Boston, we're more progressive in Boston. It's true. Yes. I continue to root for Boston. Yes, I've seen both.
But the women don't know when you say it and when you don't say it. I mean, they're not sure.
Oh, no, she's talking about Yom Kippur. And I mentioned it so that she brought up that. The question comes up, what do you do on a daily basis for Tachanun? And, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. A lot of women don't say Tachanun Bichlal ever, and that custom exists. And again, Hakol Lefi HaMinhag. And I'm going to make an editorial comment that will make my wife happy since she's listening. There's a problem with many mechitzot, especially here in Eretz Yisrael, more so than in Chutz La'aretz, and that is that even if you're in shul, you can't see what's going on. And you don't know, and that's a problem. The mechitzah should be a barrier between the two sides, but it shouldn't necessarily stop the women from being able to follow what's happening in the Beit Knesset, whether it's something like this or it's Birchat Kohanim or whatever it might be. The women should be able to follow what's going on. And some shows, this the first place I saw this was the Boston Rabbi in Brookline, but the greatest mechitzah and it's fabulous. I don't know why more places haven't done it. Are the one-way glass. Mm-hmm. That on one side, for the men's side, it's sort of, cloudy and can't see through, and then the women's side can see through. And actually, if you go to the minyan at the Kotel by Wilson's Arch, with the minyan way inside the tunnel, there's a mechitza there. Women can come in before you go in for the tunnel tours. You can go in there. That mechitza has the one-way glass. That's the best mechitza, where the women can see what's going on, but the men can't see into the women's section. That you don't do better than that. Okay, so let's finally begin the psalm. And I have to do something, and I forgot I should have at the beginning. And I was told to make the following announcement that all shirim today, which is January 20th, 2019, don't know why they don't mention it, but it's also the 14th of Shvat, 5779, are sponsored by Miriam Esris. And it's done with Hodu Hashem for good health and love of Torah, and all the shirim today, and it's something that people can do. Anyone that sponsors Torah learning, of course, it's a wonderful, wonderful zchut. Okay. So the poem begins with a line that most people don't recognize, because it's not the minhag is not to recite it as part of Tachanun. And by the way, if you look in Christian translations based on the Septuagint, the Targum HaShivim, the famous miraculous Greek translation, this is a superscript, and all of the superscripts like this that say what kind of poem it is are not numbered. Our custom is to number them, but if you go in like the King James Bible, or like I said, the Septuagint, the superscripts are not numbered. And here, the superscript is very famous and incongruous, which is why we don't say it as part of our Tachanun. Lamanatseach b'neginot. It's a very sad poem. Why do we have a conductor leading music? This is not, it could be sad music, perhaps, but that was singing this, it like doesn't fit with what we're going to say in a minute. Al hashminit. Now, what's the shminit? The truth is we don't know, but everybody assumes, or almost all the commentaries, both the traditional and the historical, professors say that it means an 8-stringed instrument. The Gemara in Erechin says that's the musical instrument of Mashiach, because the regular, whether it was the kinnur or the navel, was the lyre or the harp, we're not sure, but the normal instrument, like of David HaMelech, was 7-stringed. And in Yemot HaMashiach, there's going to be an 8-stringed instrument, because 8 is the number, me'alateva, beyond the natural. And so that's what the Gemara in Erechin says. Mizmor David, it's a song of David. Now, it must be a sad song. Rabbi Sachs said, we think of many of the songs in Tehillim, like the Hallelujahs, as symphonies. This is more chamber music. There is bombastic, loud music, but there's also soft, mellow, and sad music. This is sad music. But our minhag, because it's such an uplifting line, especially the reference to Mashiach, our minhag is not to recite this line as part of Tachanun. But we recite another line instead, and if there's time, I hope at the end we'll talk about it. If we don't have time to talk about this week, I'll bring it up next week, because we're going to do 25, which is Tachanun for the Spardim next week. But let's begin the actual poem. And as you can see, the poem is split into 3 parts. The first, sort of 5 verses, because we're skipping verse Aleph, are basically the King David, the poet, the singer, dealing with something extremely severe. What exactly it is not so clear. There is one point of view that what he's dealing with was sin. And if you look at the bottom of the page, we're not going to go through this verse now. If there's time, we'll do it at the end. The bottom of the page, where it says the Yudalit, the custom is to say, V'yom David, oh God, tsar li ma'od. That pasuk, which comes from the end of Shmuel, was David HaMelech doing tshuva for which sin? No. The sin of the census, that he counted the Jews, and the Jews became sick. And we'll see why that pshat fits in, but a lot of people don't say that line. My minhag is not to say that line. It's the minhag of the Vilna Gaon, because the first historical reference to reciting that line came from the Shlah, the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, Rabbi Yeshayahu Horowitz, around 1620. So it's a relatively late addition, and so the Vilna Gaon was against these later additions, and so it's my minhag, I don't say that line, but that's the line that puts the poem into perspective. And the perspective is, David HaMelech was davening because of the sin. Okay? There is another opinion in the Midrash that says that the poem David HaMelech is davening because of his own sin. Again, the other one, the census, was also a sin, but he's davening because of the sin of Bathsheba. And there's a Midrash that says that David HaMelech became sick after that sin, and that fits in with what's going on in the first lines of the poem, because here it says, heal me. And so it sounds like disease. And we'll see as we go along. Hashem, al ba'apecha tochicheni. Okay. God, without af. Okay, I'm going to translate af as anger. We'll come back to it in a second. Tochicheni. Now I'm going to translate that as reprove me or chastise me. Rebuke me. Okay, we call the sections of curses at the end of Vayikra, B'chukotai, and the end of Devarim, Kitavo, we call that tochacha. That's very harsh rebuke. Va'al bechamatcha tiasreni, and not with your chema. I'm going to say anger again. We're going to talk about that in a second. Tiasreni. Give me musar. So there's 2 famous ways. Yisurim, but that's the same word, musar. Okay, there's 2 famous ways. There's 2 famous ways to chastise people, and one is to talk. One is tochacha, and the other is musar. And we usually think of tochacha as stronger, although not everyone agrees. There's 2 kinds of anger in the Bible. Ka'as is like the general term for anger, but it falls into 2 major categories. One is called chari'af, and that's apacha, and the other is chema, which is warmth, boiling over. Now, I like to think of chari'af as, when I was a kid, I used to, watch like cartoons. And remember when they'd show like a bull or an animal get really angry, and you could see the steam coming out of their nostrils. Okay? The word af also means nose. Off anger, nose anger, is anger that's as clear as the nose on your face. That's anger that is outward and obvious. And generally, that's considered to be the more, I mean, at that moment, it really is upsetting. Chema, which means warmth, heated anger, that's inside. Ultimately, it's the the chema, the inner angle, that's more dangerous because you don't know the person's upset with you. Remember, we have an Isser in the Torah of tisna et achicha. You cannot hate a fellow Jew. Does that mean you can't have an enemy that's a Jew? No, you can have an enemy who's an oyev who's Jewish, because oyev is open. Sina is hidden. So sina, the hidden anger, you can't do that to a Jew. If you're angry, upset with a fellow Jew, you must tell them. That's af, because ultimately that's less dangerous than the chema, because the chema, the sina, is inside. So we're saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're not saying don't punish me. I deserve a punishment, but let the punishment not be in anger. What does that mean? I mean, many of us in this room are parents, and we have punished children. And think about the times you punished your children out of anger. Go to your room. Whatever it might be, okay? How many times after you've punished them out of anger did you later regret it? Because when you're angry, you don't necessarily measure the crime carefully. I want you, God, to punish me. I deserve a punishment, but I want the punishment to come from a cool head. Not that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is disturbed by our human emotions, but that's the way David HaMelech is talking to Kadosh Baruch Hu. I want the punishment to be exactly fitting to the crime, not to be something that is over the top because of momentary anger, because of my present relationship with you. That's something that's very important. And you know what? Sometimes you say to your kid, something has to be done about this. We're going to talk about this later, Especially if you're outside the house, you do that. But sometimes even in the house, you should do it. Let's have cooler heads and talk about what should be the hashlachot, the ramifications of that behavior. And that's the way you should punish. It should never be with either, chariyaf or chema. Please.
I just want to say that it's out of control.
I'm sorry?
Usually it's a lack of control.
Correct, of course. Oh, yeah. Right, and then the punishment will be over the top. So David HaMelech is begging a Kadosh Baruch Hu to please do it in this way. Now, at this point, I want to stop for a second, because in one of the Perushim on the Siddur, namely the Eitz Yosef, he says that the first 5 verses, the first 6 verses that we're talking about, are really based on a pasuk in Yechezkel, which is very funny that he says that, because of course Yechezkel was hundreds of years later than David HaMelech. But there's like this idea amongst the many scholars that because all these Nevi'im, they all saw everything. That may have worked with Moshe Rabbeinu. I don't think it worked with others, but it's become a famous idea that's mentioned in Midrashim that that Yechezkel at one point says to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, he says Lahatzil anachnu mishisha malchei chavala. He asks a Kadosh Baruch Hu to save him and the Jewish nation from the 6 angels of chavala. Chavala is, in this case, means punishment, but we know the word can also mean destruction. What's the modern Hebrew word for terrorists? Mechabel. Okay, so chavala means destruction, punishment in a very bad sense. And so there's one of the visions of Yechezkel, one of the many visions of Yechezkel, though we don't understand so well, is that six malachim, angels, messengers of HaKadosh Baruch Hu come, and are punishing us for various kinds of sin, okay? And so David HaMelech in these 5 verses, if you count the verbs that he uses vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay, they are tochicheni, tiasreni, chaneni, rifa'eni, hoshieni, and shuva. Okay, there are 6 verbs he uses vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so people say the 6 verbs are the 6 different kinds of damaging that HaKadosh Baruch Hu on different occasions sends to the world. So David HaMelech, there's famine, and then there's disease, and what all sorts of things. So David HaMelech in these verses is saying, "Help me from all 6," even though when we get to verse 3, which is the second verse of our analysis, it seems like he's focusing on one particular form, and that is Chaneni Hashem ki umlal ani. Have chen. What's chen? Grace. I know we don't like to use that word so much because it's so popular in Christian circles. But grace is a beautiful word. Favor, we sometimes say. Do me a favor. Do for me something I don't deserve. When we beg Hashem for something we don't deserve, what do we call that? We plead. We can beg or plead, whatever term you want to use, for something we don't deserve. We call that, right, which means tachanun. That's where we get the name of the prayer. It's going to come up again at the bottom in the lines that we have, but that's where the idea of tachanun. Tachanun means pleading, begging, and it comes from Moshe Rabbeinu, the Et Hanan, when Moshe Rabbeinu was asking toward the end of his life to be allowed to come into Eretz Yisrael, and he begged, he pleaded with the Kashu, please let me in. I know I don't deserve it. I deserve the punishment of not going in. But in spite of that, I'm begging for it anyways. That's tachanun. When we sit down and say tachanun and we recite these lines, we're recognizing that we don't necessarily deserve the goodness that we're asking from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the favor, in this case, either the cure or the tshuva, the forgiveness. But we're begging because we know we don't deserve it. We're asking for chanun, okay? And we'll come back to that term at the bottom if there's time today. Otherwise, we'll do it next week. Ki umlal ani. What does umlal mean? So I looked at a number of translations. If somebody has a different translation, let me know. And I got wretched, languishing, pining away, frail, the most common, weak. Feeble's here. Withered is an interesting one that I'm going to talk about in a second. I'm sorry. So what's that? 7 translations for this. I'm sorry? Miskain. In modern Hebrew, definitely, umlal anochi means miskain. I am, how to translate miskain? I'm les miserables. The ha'umlalim, Les Miserables. They're doing a new version of it on BBC. I'm a big fan. I love Les Miserables. Okay, I read it when I was a kid. I read it to my kids. I love Les Miserables. But umlalim, the ones who are miserable, and that's great. Thank you. Yes, please. I'm sorry. Oh, bowed down. Umlau, bowed down, bowed over. Interesting. Okay. Brought low. Yeah, brought low. I've been brought low. Umlau, I'm not sure how to translate it, but it means I'm in a bad situation. But I saw a fascinating approach in the Iyun Tefillah, one of the great commentaries on Sidur. And he says, Ki umlau anochi. Okay. And he says it's related to another word. Kuf, Aleph Mem Lamed is connected to Kuf Mem Lamed. And that word, Kamal, Umlau, Omal, and Kamal are related to each other. It's just with humans, we use the word Amal. With plants, we use the word Kamal. And Akaro Mal Inyan Krita Kamilata Orla. It's being cut off from something. It means being uprooted. And the reason I wanted to share with you this translation, one of the translations I saw was withered, and that fits in that it is, according to the Iyun Tefillah, a reference to vegetation, a botanical reference, and he says that word is used by trees because what is man? Man, ish, hasad, is eitz hasadeh. I just wanted to get that in because tonight's Tu B'Shvat. So, so eat a lot of fruit tonight and tomorrow. There's a minute to eat 15 different kinds of fruit. But it's in other words, the idea is that we are in a terrible situation. The terrible situation can be one of two. One is, I am just in this weakened, brought low situation. But there's another approach that's being pushed here, which is I am disconnected. And both of those are very powerful situations to find yourself in. One of the things that really leads to depression is this sense of disconnect. And that's, so whichever way, I'm not sure the best translation, Les Miserables is like nice. Okay, I like, but it's either brought low, which is Hirsch, bowed down, or it's Miskain, I'm really in a difficult, brought low situation. They both are very evocative of a very difficult situation. Umlal is a tough word. Please.
I think the withered fits in very well with the next phrase.
Withered, weakened, which is the next phrase, which goes on to say, Rifa'eni Hashem, cure me, heal me. This has brought many people to think that David HaMelech is talking about disease, okay? And that fits in with after the sin of Bathsheba, he got sick, and for the people got sick, perhaps even him, after the sin of the census. All of that fits in, except both in Yirmiyahu and Yeshayahu. The term refuah is used for tshuva. And so it doesn't have to be disease. That the depression that he's in could be caused by the sense of separation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought about by sin. As the Rambam talks about in the 7th parak of Hilchot Tshuva, that when we sin, we become disconnected, separate. An iron curtain, he uses that expression, iron wall, is erected between us and Kadosh Baruch Hu. The refuah, the tshuva, is breaking those barriers. Very powerful idea. We use this expression more in the sense of tshuva. Although, when you look at lists of psalms to recite for someone who's ill, this appears on it, again, because of this line. And again, it could be that the original purpose was he was sick or others were sick. However, we use it in the sense of tshuva. Rav Hashem ki nivhala atzamai. This is very powerful. Don't forget this word, nivhala. Another word that's hard to translate. It means to be shaken, okay? Could be crushed, okay? Or broken. Nivhala. I mean, it's the idea of, tremendously upset. The idea of chaos, okay? I'm in a case of nivhala, bahala, okay? And so we're saying, cure me, Hashem, because my bones are shaken, crushed, broken, okay? Stirred, not shaken. Whatever, okay, whatever it is, okay? But what's important in this is the next line. Nafshi nivhala ma'od. It's not just my bones that are in this agitated sense. It's my soul. It's my life force. So that, which is my soul and life force in danger because I'm ill, or are my bones breaking and shaking and agitated because I'm in a bad spiritual, moral situation? Which one is it? Or all of the above. They go back and forth. We know now, David HaMelech was aware of this, way before Freud. Your physical state and your mental state are very much connected, are really one and the same. And David HaMelech is expressing that here. Please. Yes, refers to Nefesh, refers to Guf. And both Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu use that metaphor. Cure me in the sense of grant me tshuva. Right?
More emotional.
And that's more emotional. But where does emotional, psychological, and physical begin? We now know. This goes back to 2000, and I had a rash on the back of my calves. It was very, very itchy, and I went to a doctor. I went to I was in Klalit in those days, and they sent me to the Rofei or the dermatologist, and he takes a quick look at it and says, and he was an Arab doctor. He was very nice. It was very nice and seemed extremely competent, but it was an Arab doctor. And I was living in a frat at the time. It was the second intifada had broken out. And so he said, do you have any lachats in your life? So I felt saying, well, if your cousin would stop shooting at me on the road, then I might have a little less lachats in my life. And it was psoriasis. And he went on to say that I just said yes. He was very nice. There was no reason to put him on the spot. And I said, yes. And he says, well, psoriasis and your mental state are very closely tied. And, he gave me a mishkan and it worked and, okay. But it's like, it's very, very real.
Stress.
Right. The mind-body connection is very, very real. And stress brings on all sorts of things. And so does depression. And sin leads to these things. We see it. That's what David HaMelech is talking about. So we're now in Pasuk Dalet. Let's continue. Nafshi nivhala ma'od. My bones are only nivhala. My soul is nivhala ma'od. Which comes first, we're not sure. I mean, historically, there are different opinions, but they both are connected. Va'ata Hashem ad matai. When am I going to get some relief from this? It's recognizing that ultimately a lot is in the hands of Hashem. And of course, that's what we have to do over and over again, is place ourselves in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When will this come to an end? And the request is very much addressed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I really need help from you. Shuva Hashem chalza nafshi. Now Shuva, again, really sounds like we're on the tshuva track, right? The idea of return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay? Return, okay? Hashem chalza nafshi. My soul will only have chilutz. My soul will only have release from the agitation, the pressure, the shaking, whatever it is, will only have chalutz. Chalitza is release. We know it means release. It releases both in the physical sense and the emotional sense and in the halachic sense. Because we know that's how you get out of yibum, is chalitza. It means release. It's a very important term. In Hebrew, both in terms of the physical reality and the spiritual reality and the halachic reality. It's fascinating. A number of commentaries bring down chilutz is the opposite of lachatz. That it's not uncommon in Hebrew for opposites to have the same letters jumbled around, okay? And lachatz is pressure. Chilutz is release. So David HaMelech is whatever, whether it's his sin, whether it's the national state, whether it's his disease, he's under tremendous lachatz. And so the correct word to beg from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is chaltza nafshi. Release my soul. Release me. And you can do it so many, you can do it for so many things, whether it's promises or contracts or whatever, or emotional connections. This release is so therapeutic. And here, David HaMelech understands all this. David HaMelech was so amazing in so many areas, as a writer and as a warrior, but as a psychologist, he really understands so much about human nature. It's really fascinating to read so much of his material. Release my soul. We're not sure exactly what the lachatz is coming from. We saw many, many different candidates, but the lachatz is there. Release me. Hoshieni. Save me. Now, of course, this is save me in a spiritual sense. Save me in a physical sense is hatzola. Okay, and when you're, God forbid, you're drowning in the ocean, you don't say, Ana Hashem Oshiana. You say, Hatzilu, okay? Everyone's got that, okay? But here is Hoshieni, save me in a spiritual sense. And of course, the root of the word Hoshieni is Sha'ah, which literally, if you go back to Perek Dalet of Breshit, means turn to me. Hoshieni in the spiritual sense is HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns toward you. And that's what you're asking. That's again, Shuva Hashem, return to me. Hoshiana is turn to me. Give me this sense of your closeness. I really need this sense of intimacy with you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again. Now, this idea of intimacy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, some people say, is inherent in when you not only put your head down, but you cover up your head. Whether it's in your arm or you've got the talit or whatever it might be over your head, is that you're having like a private audience, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, that's Hoshia, this intimacy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now it really changes. Vav really belongs to the next part. That was my typo here. So we've really gone through the begging of Kadosh Baruch Hu for release. This next line, I really think belongs further down, but it could be connected here. This is the last line where he's addressing a Kadosh Baruch Hu. In the poem, one of the ways that you delineate the different sections is who is the speaker, David HaMelech, addressing. And this is the last line where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is addressed by David HaMelech. So a certain sense belongs to the first part, but a certain sense belongs to the next part. You'll see why in a second. Ki ein b'mavet zichrecha. I don't want to die. I don't want to die because when I die, I can no longer continue to remember you. This idea of I lose an ability to relate to a Kadosh Baruch Hu by dying is in Hallel also. We say to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Dumana, those who are dead don't praise you. We're doing it, life means to praise a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and so he's saying, I want to continue to live, not just for any selfish reason, but I want to continue to live so I can continue to praise you, to remember you, to have this relationship with you. Now, zichrecha, as opposed to Hallel. In Hallel, we say, when I die, I can't praise you anymore. Remember, you includes the concept of Hallel, but it's also mitzvot. We remember Kadosh Baruch Hu through mitzvot. As I can no longer gain merit after I'm gone. This does not mean does not mean that in death there no longer is a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Doesn't mean that. It means I can no longer gain more merit because merit comes through mitzvot done in Olam Hazeh, and I can no longer do the praises. B'sha'ol mi yodelach, and of course Sha'ol literally means in the pit, the depth. Okay. However, it could mean the grave, well, that was probably the original pshat, but most Meforshim say it means, hell. Yeah, Gehenna. Okay, in the pit, which could mean the grave, but what he's saying is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, do all these things, release me, keep me alive, heal me, cure me, come close to me again, because if I die, I can no longer continue my efforts at remembering you and glorifying you, b'sha'ol mi yodelach, after death, who, the grave or other, who continues to acknowledge you. Yoda, thank and acknowledge you. I have a lot to still say. Please give me the opportunity to continue saying it. I knew actually a rabbi who stopped saying Tachnim because of these next two lines. He found it too depressing. And so he just said, I'm not going to say Tachnim anymore. So I said, why don't you just say 25, like the Sfardim do, and which is we'll see next week is a less depressing poem than this. It's verse Zion is very powerful and evocative. And I think there's truth to it sometimes. This rabbi didn't want to say it on a regular, it was an Orthodox rabbi, didn't want to say this on a regular basis. He just found it difficult. So I said, why don't you say 25? Then I said to him, why don't you just say it like most people and don't think about what you're saying. Just say it. Baruch Hashem, he didn't like that answer. It's a lousy answer. But I said, no, because the problem was that, I don't want to mention the venue, but there were people that were noticing he wasn't saying Tachanu with the rest of us. So I said, just say it. It doesn't look good when a rabbi's not doing it. Okay. Very powerful pasuk Zion. Yagati. I'm exhausted. I am just worn out. I got nothing left in the tank. Nigmar li hasus. I just put it all out. Ba'an chasi. I just am exhausted from what's an anchati? A groan, a sigh. Come on, but the best word from krechtzing. Krechts. It means krechts. Ba'an chasi. It's Shimon Shavua Tov. This one's recording, so you hopefully okay. I got to rush. Okay. He's not just leaving. Okay, we'll finish this next week and we'll start 25. Okay? But let's get through this pasuk and we'll end with this. I'm just exhausted. Why is he exhausted? I'm groaning. I'm krechtzing. There's no better word than that. Asche b'chol laila mitati. There are different midrashim. One says that David HaMelech was crying so much that his bed, he was swimming in his bed. There's a midrash that they had to change David HaMelech's sheets 7 times in the night. Okay, that he was so wet. Why was he exhausted? He can't sleep. I'm exhausted from this emotional investment in my issues. And I'm just exhausted. I'm just totally spent. And I can't sleep. I'm crying so much that everything is wet. B'dimasi arsi amseh. our C, is I'm going to say bed, even though we quite often translate it as a crib, a cradle. It also, by the way, can mean a crypt as well. I'm sorry. Right. Yeah. It's used the first time it's used, I think, as a crypt. A burial place is by Og in Sefer Devarim. I think that was the first time it was used to mean to mean that. But it means that enclosure that I'm in. It's an enclosure, okay? And the enclosure could be, of course, when you're asleep, or could be when you're dead, okay? And I just feel enclosed. I just feel the walls are closing in. That's what we feel from the word eres here. And remember, we said one of his petitions to HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Chaltza nafshi, open up the enclosures. David HaMelech just feels the pressures of whatever it is, whether it's disease or sin or his responsibilities as king. He just feels it pressing in on him, and he's exhausted from the fact that he can't sleep because of his not just his physical state, but his spiritual state and his emotional state, his psychological state. This is such a powerful pasuk. I remember the Rav once saying, he doesn't understand how anyone can read this pasuk and not cry. And it's like, it's such a powerful pasuk, and it's just one of the things that saddens me is to see people daven, tachanun in 8 seconds. It's just a remarkable poem and psalm, and it requires more attention than we give it. Well, we will finish the poem next week. We'll do a little bit of the introductory verses and the different minhagim, and then we'll get into Psalm 25, which is the less depressing Sephardi version. And also Chabad says 25 instead of, we'll talk about why, the sources for why that is as well. Okay, everyone should have a Shavua Tov. Everyone should have a very joyous Tu B'Shvat here in Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Hashem, Tu B'Shvat is mamish happy because they don't force us to eat boxer. So everybody should celebrate Tu B'Shvat, and Bez Hashem. See you next week.